At 1:58 p.m., 2 minutes before I walked down the aisle of the glass house estate, my phone buzzed against my palm. The venue was flawless, overlooking the Seattle cliffs, but in the front row, 2 chairs sat empty. They were marked with elegant gold leaf cards that read Mother and Father. I looked down at the screen. The text from my mother was short. Connor Unk's showcase ran late. Scouts are looking, we can't leave now. Catch you next time. Next time. Like my wedding was a lunch date they could reschedule. The wedding planner rushed over, reaching for the reserved signs to hide the embarrassment. I stopped her. Leave them, I said. My voice didn't shake, I didn't cry. I just wanted the world to see exactly what they had chosen. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and tell me first, where did you hear this from? Write it in the comments, because what happens next, most people won't believe. I didn't rush the walk. Most brides worry about tripping or their veil catching, but as I stepped onto the runner, my eyes were fixed on the front row. Those 2 empty chairs with their gold leaf reserved signs were screaming louder than the string quartet. The wedding planner had wanted to pull them to shuffle the guests around so the gap wouldn't be so obvious, but I had refused. That was the strategy. If I hid their absence, I would be protecting their reputation at the expense of my own dignity. I would be the daughter whose parents couldn't make it. The sad story. By leaving the chairs empty, I turned their negligence into an exhibit. I wanted every high-profile tech CEO, every venture capitalist, and every friend in that audience to see exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. When I reached the altar, Nathan took my hand. He glanced at the empty seats, his jaw tightening, but he didn't say a word. He knew. We exchanged vows with the Pacific wind, rattling the glass walls of the estate, a perfect hermetically sealed environment for the truth to finally come out. I didn't shed a tear. I felt lighter than I had in 20 years. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to show up. I was acknowledging that they never would. The reception was a blur of networking and champagne until Julian found me. Julian was Nathan's business partner, a guy who lived his life with a camera lens permanently attached to his hand. He had 500,000 followers who tuned in for his tech reviews and lifestyle content. And tonight, he was live streaming the wedding as an exclusive look into the private lives of Seattle's tech elite. He cornered us near the ice sculpture, his phone held high, the ring light reflecting in his glasses. Say hello to 500,000 people, Alex. He beamed, angling the camera so we were perfectly framed against the cliffside view. The chat is going crazy for the dress. I smiled, the practiced, polite smile I had perfected after a lifetime of deflecting family awkwardness. It was going fine until Julian panned the camera around the room, showing off the crowd. He frowned, looking back at me. The camera's still rolling. Hey, I haven't seen your folks yet. I wanted to get a shot of the parents of the bride. Where are they hiding? The room seemed to go quiet, though the music was still playing. I looked directly into the lens. I didn't look away. I didn't stutter. I saw the viewer count ticking upward in the corner of his screen. This was it. The moment I stopped covering for them. They aren't here, Julian, I said, my voice level projecting clearly over the ambient noise. They're at a regional baseball practice for my brother. They thought it was a better investment of their time. Julian froze. The smile dropped off his face. He tried to laugh it off, thinking it was a dry joke, but I held his gaze. I wasn't joking. I was stating a fact. I watched his eyes dart to the chat stream on his screen. It was moving so fast. It was a blur of emojis and shocked comments. He muttered an apology and cut the feed, but it was too late. The clip was already out there. I took a sip of my champagne and looked out at the ocean. I didn't feel guilty. I felt efficient. I had just broadcast their priorities to 500,000 strangers, and all I had to do was tell the truth. They wanted to focus on Connor Unk's stats. Fine, I just gave them a statistic they couldn't ignore. I let the silence linger for a week. The comments under the reposted clip piled up into the thousands. Strangers were dissecting my parents' choices, calling them everything from negligent to narcissistic. I didn't engage. I didn't like the comments. I didn't reply to the private messages asking for gossip. I just let the internet do what it does best, hold up a mirror. But the silence at home was deafening. My phone, usually quiet, became a battlefield of notifications I refused to open. It wasn't until Thursday that I sat down with the financial records. I had always been meticulous with my own finances, a habit born from necessity, but I had never looked too closely at the family ledger. I assumed there was nothing to see. My parents constantly complained about money, about the sacrifices they made for Connor Unk's career. I believed them. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents. But the anger from the wedding had cleared a fog I didn't know I was living in. I pulled up the old bank statements from the joint account I had shared with my mother during college. It was supposed to be for emergencies, a safety net I rarely touched because I was too busy working 3 jobs to need it. I started scrolling back. 4 years. 5 years ago, the numbers didn't make sense. There were withdrawals, large ones labeled transfer. I cross-referenced them with dates. The first one, $5,000, coincided with the week Connor started his elite pitching camp. The second, $3,000, matched the weekend they bought him all new gear. It went on and on. $10,000 here, $2,000 there. All drained from an account that was legally in my name, an account I had forgotten about because I was told it was empty. I felt sick. It wasn't just negligence, it was theft. I dug deeper. I found the trust document my aunt had left. It was simple, straightforward, a nest egg for my education to be accessed when I turned 18. But the access logs showed login from my parents' IP address months after my birthday. They had forged my signature. They had transferred the funds to their personal account, then funneled it directly into Connor Unk's training. The total was staggering, $150,000. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. They hadn't just prioritized him emotionally. They had financed his failure with my future. Every late shift I worked, every textbook I bought secondhand, every time I ate ramen because I couldn't afford groceries, I was paying for his pitching lessons. I was subsidizing the very thing that made me invisible. The realization wasn't hot like anger. It was cold. It settled in my bones like ice. They had bet everything on him, including money that wasn't theirs to bet, and they had lost. I closed the laptop. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I picked up my phone and called Nathan. I need the number for your forensic accountant, I said. My voice was steady, professional. Why? He asked, concern edging into his tone. Because I'm not just cutting them off, I said. I'm auditing them. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. It was a crime scene, and I was done being the victim. I was about to become the prosecutor. By Monday morning, the clip of me announcing my parents' absence had jumped from the local Seattle tech circle to the general public. I woke up to my name trending locally, but what really caught my attention wasn't the strangers commenting on my dress. It was the sudden, frantic realization from my parents that they had missed a massive networking opportunity. They hadn't just snubbed their daughter. They had snubbed Nathan, whose recent software acquisition was front-page news in the Business Journal that same morning. They realized too late that they had bet on a minor league pitcher and ignored a major league payout. The damage control began at 9:00 a.m. sharp. My mother didn't call to apologize. She went straight to Facebook. I watched the notification pop up on my screen. A long, rambling post tagged with my name designed to elicit maximum sympathy from her church group and bridge club. It was a masterclass in revisionist history. She claimed I had been vague about the event, that I had called it a small celebratory dinner, and that they had no idea it was a wedding. She wrote about how heartbroken she was to be excluded, painting me as a bridezilla who set them up to fail because I was jealous of Connor Unk's potential career. Then came the voice note from Connor. I played it in the quiet of my kitchen, the coffee steam rising in the air. His voice was thick with that specific mix of entitlement and aggression. I had known my whole life. You did this on purpose. He spat. You knew the scouts were there. You just had to make everything about you. Now everyone is laughing at Mom. You're a narcissist. Alex, a complete narcissist. I set the phone down. The old Alex, the one who craved their approval, would have drafted a 3-page text message explaining herself. I would have argued. I would have sent screenshots of our conversations where I begged them to come. I would have screamed that I sent them a save the date 6 months ago. But arguing is fuel for people like them. It validates their delusion. It tells them that their opinion still holds weight. I chose a different weapon. I chose the dignity of silence. I didn't comment on my mother's post. I didn't reply to Connor. I didn't feed the beast. Instead, I opened my cloud storage and found the digital proof. The invitation I had sent via email, which had a read receipt from both of them dated 4 months prior. The graphic was clear. The wedding ceremony of Alexandra and Nathan. Below that, I found the text thread from a month ago where my mother asked what color the bridesmaids were wearing so she wouldn't clash. I took a screenshot of the invitation. Screenshot of the text. I stitched them together into a single image. No caption, no emotional plea. No, I can't believe you did this. Just the evidence, cold and hard. I posted it to my timeline right underneath my mother's tearful diet tribe. The reaction was immediate. The internet loves a villain, but it loves a receipt even more. Within an hour, the comments on my mother's post shifted from sympathy to interrogation. Strangers were tagging her, asking why she asked about bridesmaid dresses for a small dinner. The narrative she tried to spin crumbled under the weight of a single JPEG. I watched her delete the post 20 minutes later. I didn't feel triumphant, I felt clinical. I had surgically removed their ability to lie about me. They wanted to control the story. Fine, but I was the one holding the pen now. I met with the forensic accountant in a conference room that felt more like a sterile operating theatre. He laid the documents out on the glass table. They were extensive. The audit of the college fund wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a full confession written in bank transfers. The trail was undeniable. My aunt had left the money specifically for my education placed in a trust that matured on my 18th birthday. The records showed a series of withdrawals starting 3 weeks after that date. The signatures on the authorization forms were good, but they weren't perfect. A loop on the was too wide. The slant was slightly off. It was my mother's handwriting trying to be mine. I stared at the forgery, feeling a strange sense of detachment. This was the woman who taught me how to write my name in cursive, now using that knowledge to rob me. The money trail led directly to expenses that had nothing to do with education. A $40,000 payment to a luxury car dealership for a custom truck registered to Connor. $25,000 to a consultant who promised to get scouts to notice him. Even gambling debts paid off to keep Connor Unk's record clean. The accountant looked up, his face grave. This is felony fraud, Alex. Identity theft, forgery, embezzlement. The statute of limitations hasn't run out. You can press charges. I looked at the total amount again. $150,000. That money could have meant I didn't have to work the night shift during finals week. It could have meant a down payment on a house years ago. It could have meant freedom. Instead, it was fuel for Connor Unk's ego. Do you want me to file the police report? He asked. I hesitated, not because I felt mercy, but because I was calculating. A police report would be public, it would be messy. It would drag me into court for months, maybe years. I didn't want to spend another minute of my life thinking about them. I wanted them gone. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done without me having to carry it anymore. No, I said, finally I have a better idea. I picked up the file. I didn't need the police to destroy them. I had something more powerful. I had Grandma Ruth. My grandmother was the matriarch of the family in the truest sense. She controlled the legacy, the reputation, and most importantly, the real estate. She had let my parents live in the family home for decades, rent-free, assuming they were raising us right. She had no idea they were criminals. I called her. I didn't give details over the phone. I just said, Grandma, I have some papers you need to see. Can I come over? She sensed the gravity in my voice immediately. Come now, she said. I drove to her house with a file on the passenger seat. It felt heavy, like I was transporting a bomb, and in a way I was about to blow up the last remnants of my family. And for the first time in my life I wasn't afraid of the explosion. I was the one lighting the fuse. 2 days later. My receptionist buzzed me at 10:00 a.m. She sounded nervous. There are 2 people here to see you, Alex. They say they're your parents and they're insisting. I told her to send them back. I didn't clear my schedule. I didn't tidy my desk. I sat in my glass-walled office, overlooking the city, the very image of the career they had ignored for a decade, and waited. They stormed in like they owned the place. My father looked disheveled, his face red with that specific shade of indignation he reserved for when the world didn't bend to his will. My mother was vibrating with anxiety, clutching her purse like a shield. They didn't look at the view. They didn't look at my awards on the shelf. They looked at me like I was a disobedient employee. You need to fix this, my father barked, slamming his hand on my desk. Right now, Connor Unk's agent is asking questions. The scouts are seeing those posts. You are destroying his reputation because you're petty. My mother chimed in, her voice shrill. The neighbors are talking, Alexandra. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? We can't show our faces at the club. You need to delete the post, issue an apology, and tell everyone it was a misunderstanding. I let them finish. I let the silence stretch out until it became uncomfortable, heavy with the weight of their delusion. They were standing in a multi-million-dollar firm I helped build, demanding I save the reputation of a brother who is currently unemployed and gambling away my stolen inheritance. It was almost impressive how blind they were. I'm not taking anything down, I said calmly. And I'm not the one you should be worried about. I pressed a button on my intercom. You can come in now. The side door opened and Grandma Ruth walked in. If my parents were the storm, Ruth was the mountain. She was 82, sharp as a tack, and she didn't use a cane. She walked to the head of the conference table and sat down. She didn't look at me. She looked at her son, my father. Mom, he stammered, the air instantly leaking out of his aggression. What are you doing here? I'm here to clean up the mess, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it stopped the room cold. Alexandra showed me the files. Jeffrey, the trust fund, the forgery, the truck. My mother started to cry, the immediate reflexive tears she always used to garner sympathy. Ruth, please, we had to. It was for Connor Unk's future. We were going to pay it back. Stop, Ruth said. She didn't raise her voice. She just cut the air with her hand. You stole $150,000 from your daughter. You committed a felony, and you did it while living in my house for free. That was the leverage nobody talked about. My parents lived in the family estate, a sprawling property. Belonged to Ruth. She had let them stay there for 20 years to raise the children. They had grown comfortable, assuming the deed would just transfer to them one day. They forgot that Ruth was a businesswoman first and a mother second. She slid a thick manila envelope across the polished mahogany table. It stopped right in front of my father. "What is this?" he asked, his voice trembling. "It's an eviction notice," Ruth said. "You have 30 days to vacate the premises. I'm selling the estate." "No, rather, I'm transferring the deed into a trust." She turned to look at me then, her eyes hard but clear, "And Alexandra is the sole trustee. If you want an extension, if you want to negotiate terms, you don't talk to me. You talk to your landlord." My father looked at me, his face draining of color. The power dynamic in the room didn't just shift, it capsized. He realized in that second that he wasn't the patriarch anymore. He was a tenant and I was the eviction authority. My mother lunged for my hand. Across the desk, panic finally setting in. "Alex, please, you can't do this. We're your parents, we're family. Where are we supposed to go? You have to help us." I looked at her hands, the same hands that had forged my signature. The same hands that had typed that text message dismissing my wedding. I didn't feel the urge to pull away. I didn't feel the urge to comfort her. I felt nothing but the cool, smooth surface of the desk beneath my fingers. I stood up. I picked up the file containing the evidence of their fraud. I looked my mother in the eye and I delivered the line I had been waiting 20 years to say. "I'm sorry, I can't help you," I said, my voice flat and final. "I have other priorities." I signaled security. They were escorted out of the building, past the glass walls, past the staff, into a world that no longer cared about Connor Unk's pitching arm. I watched them go and then I went back to work. The fallout wasn't loud. It didn't happen with explosions or screaming matches in the street. It happened with the quiet scratching of pens on legal documents and the shuffling of moving boxes. Grandma Ruth didn't bluff. 30 days after the confrontation in my office, my parents were vacating the estate they had lived in for 20 years. They moved into a 2-bedroom rental in a part of town where the neighbors didn't care about social standing or baseball stats. I didn't go to watch them leave. I didn't drive by their new place to gloat. I simply didn't care. That was the strangest part of the aftermath. I expected to feel triumphant, to feel a surge of victory, seeing the people who had marginalized me finally facing consequences. But I didn't feel victory. I just felt relief. The silence they left behind wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Connor Unk's baseball career ended not with a bang but with a whimper. Without the stolen money to pay for his elite coaches, and without the family home to host scouts, the illusion of his talent evaporated. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he's working at a logistics warehouse now. It's honest work, probably the first honest thing he's ever done. He has to stand on his own 2 feet for the first time in 22 years, and from what I hear, he's struggling under the weight of gravity. 6 months later, I was standing on the balcony of my own home with Nathan. The Seattle skyline was painted in twilight purples and greys. The air was crisp. Nathan handed me a thick envelope that had arrived in the mail that afternoon. It had my father's handwriting on the front, no return address, but I knew that jagged scroll anywhere. I held it for a moment. It felt heavy. I knew what was inside without opening it. It would be an itemized list of everything they had ever bought me. Diapers, food, clothes, accompanied by a letter demanding I pay them back for the privilege of being born. Or maybe it was a guilt trip, a 4-page essay on how I had broken the family and how God was watching me. Nathan watched me, waiting to see if I would tear it open, if I would let their poison back into my bloodstream one last time. I walked inside to my home office. I didn't sit down. I didn't reach for a letter opener. I fed the envelope directly into the shredder, the machine word. A short, sharp mechanical sound, and then silence returned. I didn't read a single word. That was the true end of the relationship, not the eviction, not the lawsuit, but the indifference. Hate is still a connection. Anger is still a tether. But treating their final like junk mail, that was freedom. I walked back out to the balcony and took Nathan's hand. We had a company to run, a life to build, and a future that belonged entirely to us. My parents had spent decades betting on a fantasy, investing in an ego that couldn't sustain them. I had invested in reality. I had invested in myself. And as I looked out over the city I helped design, I knew the returns were finally coming in. If you were in my shoes, would you have pressed charges for the $150,000? Fraud, or was the eviction enough of a punishment? Let me know in the comments. And if this story fired you up, hit that like button so we can keep exposing the truth. And subscribe for more story, share this story. You are not alone. God bless you. Thanks for watching.